Hey, vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and there is a thread going around called the 20 album chain connection, and I saw John at Digital Gramophone do this, and I thought I would try my hand at it as well. I pulled somewhat basically randomly, but from a section of my record collection that is dedicated to acoustic, roots, bluegrass, folk, some Americana, that sort of thing section. So I thought it might be a little bit easier to do this. I'm not doing this cold. I've thumbed through these records and arranged them in order to see if I can pull this off. But I'm going to do it without any edits, hopefully, and hopefully I won't forget what my connection is. But we're going to start with this CMH release, Arthur Smith and Don Reno, great names in the music industry, and here they are doing Feudin' Again, and there's a wide selection of songs. There's a polka in here, Pennsylvania polka. They're doing the Bye Bye Blues, doing Hello Dolly. Very diverse selections there. They're doing primarily acoustically, and I'll connect that with this record. This is David Grisman, Acousticy, on Zebra from 1985. Okay, and there they are. And my connection between the two is both of these artists, these albums, are very diverse. They don't stick to any rigid genre. They use a variety of instruments, and they move from genre to genre and intersect and merge genres a great deal. Okay, and the next record is Jazzgrass, and this is by Slim Ritchie. Jacket's in kind of rough shape, but the record plays wonderfully. Almost very good plus on Ridge Runner Records from 1977. And the connection between this and the David Grisman is that they are both merging jazz and bluegrass in their albums. Now, on this album, the banjo player is Alan Mundy on this album, and he is a member of Country Gazette, and this is their album Out to Lunch. Alan Mundy is I don't know which one he is, to be honest with you. Look, they're all guys with dark hair and beards. So this is a Jimmy Dixon produced album, Out to Lunch, on Flying Fish Records from 1976. Okay, now on this record is this is a West Coast bluegrass band, and guys that played with them a lot, another West Coast bluegrass band, were the Dillards, and this is Dillard Hartford Dillard album. So it's Doug and Rodney Dillard, and there's Doug and Rodney and John Hartford. Okay, so this is long title, Glittergrass from the Nashwood Hollyville Strings. It's from 1977 on Flying Fish Records. And so 1/3 of this group includes John Hartford. Okay, and this is Hartford, Rice, and Clements. And that's the title of the band and the group, just the name of the group. This is a 2019 release, and John Hartford, Tony Rice, and Vassar Clements. Great names in music. Now, John Hartford was the inspiration for a group of young bluegrass musicians that didn't want to conform to all the rigid rules of music, of the bluegrass genre. The Newgrass Revival And this is Fly Through the Country from 1975 on Flying Fish. A lot of these are Flying Fish records, record label out of Chicago. And the leader of the Newgrass Revival, of course, is Sam Bush. And Sam Bush, when he formed the Newgrass Revival, he basically the band broke away from the leader of the Bluegrass Alliance. They tried to fire him and keep the name, but he said, "You can't do that, I own the name." So they said, "Okay, we just quit." They quit, and it was not an amicable divorce, band divorce. And the man, the fiddler that owned the title, and off the top of my head, I can't call his name out for you, I know it when I see it, he spread rumors about Newgrass Revival, these former bandmates of his, that they were long-haired drug dealers selling drugs to high school kids. And thus, Bill Monroe, who had been friendly with them, stopped being friendly with them because he didn't want the corruption of America's youth to take place. And this album is a various artists' album from Bean Blossom, Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Festival. And this is from 1973 on MCA Records. And one of the artists performing on here and longtime Bill Monroe band member is the fiddler Kenny Baker. Okay, this is a County Records release, Kenny Baker, and it's called Farmyard Swing, and it's more of a swing album, as you say. He brought a lot of elements of swing music into Bill Monroe's band, so thus that became part of what became bluegrass. So Kenny Baker, his album is on here. One of his bandmates in Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys for a time was Jimmy Martin. And this is his greatest bluegrass hits, Jimmy Martin. And this is on Gusto Records. King of Bluegrass, he called himself. Very interesting figure, Jimmy Martin. Okay, now Jimmy Martin was lead singer for and rhythm guitarist for Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys for a time. And he replaced one Lester Flatt as lead singer and rhythm guitarist in the Bluegrass Boys. And this is Flatt and Scruggs at Carnegie Hall, and this is on Columbia Records from 1963. Now, Earl Scruggs and his three-finger style of bluegrass, banjo picking, became the mentor to so many banjo players, and really revolutionized the banjo as an instrument. So one of his disciples would have been Carter brothers. Okay, and these are two Carter brothers. This is Tim is the banjo player here, and interestingly enough, he was a friend of my best friend at Lee's McRae Junior College up in Banner Elk, North Carolina, for a time. And one of the songs that they do on here is Blackberry Blossom, which is the title and title track to Norman Blake's album on Flying Fish from 1977. Norman Blake, one of the great acoustic guitarists, along with Tony Rice, Clarence White, and some of the Doc Watson, some of the others. Okay, now, oftentimes, Norman Blake would play solo or with just one other person, oftentimes his wife Nancy on the cello usually. And he often played horn pies and reels. Another artist that often played horn pies and reels is Mike Cross, and this is his album on Sugar Hill Records, Live and Kicking, and this is from 1981. and he does a number of that sort of thing. He's playing with one other person here, just as Norman often did. Not always, but often did. And he does several traditional songs, just as Norman does. And Mike Cross was he's based out of the very vibrant music community in the Chapel Hill, North Carolina area. And a generation later, the alt country, we saw alt country become very popular, and one of the hotbeds was that same Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Durham area. And here is another artist from that area, John Howey Jr., who I believe, I forget his alt country band that he led, but they were pretty big out of there. It wasn't Whiskey Town. It was one of the others. $2 Pistols, I believe. And this is an album he put out in 2018 on Such Sounds. There he is. And he played drums until his girlfriend was the leader of this band. He played drums with them until they had a falling out, and he's no longer with them. And that would be Sarah Shook and the Devil. The Disarmers is the newer name for this. This came out in 2020. There was a limited edition release after she signed with Bloodshot Records, and they did two of the Sarah Shook and the Disarmers albums. And he is on this album as contributing on this album as well as the other two before he left that band. Okay? And Sarah Shook and the Devil. Well, what is the instrument of the devil, you ask? Would it not be the fiddle? And this is Doc Watson and Gaither Carlton, his father-in-law, who plays the fiddle on this album. This is a Smithsonian Folkways from reissue from 2020, self-titled, and they're playing music there that oftentimes people said was the devil's music, just like Sarah Shook. And Doc Watson, after the tragic death of his son Merle, Jack Lawrence became his second guitarist and companion on the road for many, many years. Jack Lawrence, before that, was a part of a duo called Smothers and Lawrence, and a band I used to go see in Boone, North Carolina at Chuck's Steakhouse, and also at the Woodlands in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Great group, little duo, and Joe Smothers and Jack Lawrence. And Joe Smothers is originally from just down the road from me. He lives in Georgia now. Jack Lawrence is from the Charlotte area. But I would see them in Boone, North Carolina when I was living up there. And the Carolina Chocolate Drops leaving Eden, these three musicians met and decided to form their group where? In Boone, North Carolina, at the Black Banjo Players Convention or seminar or something. That was a get-together to honor and learn about black artists in the folk tradition, and specifically the banjo. And so here's the Carolina Chocolate Drops. Excellent, excellent group. Lasted about 10 years, and each of them has gone their separate ways now. At least two of them having excellent success since then. And they did a wonderful job in the 2000s of bringing to light the role in folk music, string bands, for instance, music, of the role of African Americans in that important music. And Another one that would be extremely important, African American artist in the folk realm from that same area where they were learning. They were learning from folks in Mebane, a string band, African American string band musicians around the Mebane, Burlington area. Just down the road would have been Libby Cotton, Elizabeth Cotton. And Elizabeth Cotton, African American lady from Chapel Hill, who was discovered in her 60s when she had moved up to the D.C. area. And up in the D.C. area, there were this vibrant folk music and bluegrass music scene there, has been for decades. And Eddie Adcock would be one of those. Acoustic collection, this is called. Eddie Adcock and Talk of the Town is the name of his group. And Eddie Adcock does, and Talk of the Town do, Freight Train, probably the most famous of Elizabeth Cotton's songs. And this record is on CMT. Usually they have it, yep, there it is. It's a twofer on CMT, which brings us back to where I started. Arthur Smith and Don Reno's record, they recorded albums also on CMT, CMH, excuse me, not CMT, CMH, which is a label not from southeastern United States, but actually from Los Angeles, California. Okay, a Los Angeles label. So that brings us full circle, a chain of records. Okay, there it is. Somebody else want to do this? Mine was kind of random, but not absolutely random. I selected from a certain area of my collection, and I'll be for transparency here. I did say, oh, I can't use that one. I pulled a different record, the Eddie Adcock. I pulled a different record so I could make the connection. The Eddie Adcock I pulled the first time. I just couldn't make it work. So I said, okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I pulled this other one because I knew the Elizabeth Cotton song was on there. Okay, so there we go. My contribution to the thread. Somebody else do one, please. I'll put a link down to John so you can see somebody else's. And I'll tell everybody to remember to be kind to your neighbors, folks, because we're all neighbors.